thought I knew what this book was about, and then I got to the end of it. I thought I knew what this book was about and then I got to the end, and I was like, I don't know anything that I'm talking about. Anything. Hello, and welcome back to Shelby in the Book Club. I am Shelby Monet, and in today's video, we will be discussing Trinity by Zelda Lockhart. I will try not to do any spoilers, but it's really hard to talk about books in the way that I like to talk about books without some spoilage, but I'll leave all the big things out. I'm gonna try real hard. It's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna try real hard. If y'all hear snap, crackling, and popping, I got candle lit over here. Don't be alarmed. There isn't strange things happening in my household. Okay. It took me a while to read this book. I'm gonna be honest with you. It took me maybe 2 weeks to get through this, and it is a tiny book. It is only 264 pages, which y'all know I could get through this in 2 days. I should have been able to get through this in 2 days, but there was a lot happening, and there were some bits and pieces in there that kind of triggered some self-reflection, which is why I often tell y'all that I know it is very tempting to want to look towards nonfiction for all of your learning purposes, but you can learn so much from fiction. Fiction, I think, is a very good reflection of humanity and the society we live in and how people think. Because you are able to see parts of a character that you don't get to see in humans, right? I think a lot of things we don't like to see in ourselves. And because of that, we withhold parts of ourselves from other humans in our life. Not because we want to be secretive, right? But because we're harboring shame, because things are uncomfortable, because we didn't learn how to process certain stuff, and all those kind of things, and blah, 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 blah. And that's why I like books like this. That's why I like to read historical fiction. That's why I like to read literary fiction, because you get to see things in a different way. I know that reading for a lot of us is about escapism, but there was a quote that I saw that I kind of want to get tattooed down my arm that was not verbatim, but it was basically like, I've lived so many lives because I read so much. There's so many things you can experience in a book. There's so many things you can experience in a book. And it's fun, right? Do I have to tell you anymore? Before we get into this review, like, comment, subscribe. I have been loving responding to the comments. I love talking to y'all. And like, y'all asked some really good questions in the comments too. Someone was like, if you were in a bookstore right now and someone asked you, what book do you recommend? What would you say? And the answer to that is actually Trinity by Zelda Lockhart. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, do all the things. I'm trying to get to 2,000 subscribers before the end of the year. I think we can do it. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay. First, I want to say this is my very first Zelda Lockhart book. She has a few other books, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. She has 6 other books. And I want to read them. Side note, I did not know that they list the books from most recent to the past. I don't think that was always that way. And I noticed that in Walter Mosley's new book too. I'll show y'all real quick, because I was like, I've never noticed that before. But in his new book, hold on, let's check Walter Mosley's catalog, because y'all know how I feel about this man. This has nothing to do with this book. Hold on. Okay, we gonna have a moment about Walter Mosley, because y'all know how I feel about him, right? Y'all know he is my favorite. But I need to tell y'all that I saw a video of someone meeting him. The ADHD is jumping out heavy right now. I saw a video of someone meeting him, and they were like so calm, cool, collected, and I sent it to my mother, and I was like, Mommy, I would have just been standing there just screaming in that old man's face, just hollering. Just hollering. But anyway, This is his catalog. They're written like this is the book that came out most recently before this one touched. And I just thought that was interesting. Like, they labeled them. But then I'm like, I had to, I can't see nothing, okay? I gotta look. Child, I'm a senior citizen. I don't know when this happened. When did I become an elder? Jesus Christ. Anyway, I read most of this. But I just thought that was a thing. I noticed it. So now I've been looking in books to see if their backlist is in backwards chronological order. Anyway, this is my first book by her, and it has very much convinced me that I want to read more of her books. I think I'm going to get her first book, Fifth Born. And I just need to look up the rest of these because it sounds like some of these are nonfiction, and I got to be in the mood for that. I also want to tell you, I did a lot of annotating in these books. Oh my gosh, this looks so, don't it look so pretty? It really does. My handwriting is, okay. I did a lot of annotating. I want you to know that it's okay to write in your books. And it doesn't always have to be like these long drawn out thoughts, right? Like these 2 pages. All I got is abort mission and damn. Sometimes you just need to, okay? So Trinity tells the story of the Lee family, starting with I guess if we're going from the perspective of, I'll explain that in a second. So it starts with the grandfather, his childhood. Benny Lee, his mother, her name is Lottie. She is married to an older man that when she is 13 in 1939, not in 1939, she didn't marry him in 1939. We meet them in 1939. But when they originally got married, she was a part of the property that this black man was trying to acquire. She is basically passing. She is a very fair-skinned black woman, and they call him Old Daddy. Excuse me, Daddy. They call him Old Daddy. Like Southern people. This is Sampson, Mississippi, okay? Old Daddy is a very mean man. He whips his children, his very young wife, and it really sheds light on how slavery and sharecropping were basically the same thing. Now, Lottie came with the property. He had to sign a contract that he could not read, that basically stated he had to keep her along with the land. So Benny is growing up in an environment that is very violent, very hostile. His oldest brother, who isn't his mom's child, he runs away, James, and Benny is trying to figure out why his mother also wants to leave him too. It is sad, right? Because he loves his mom, but because she's so young, he calls her by her name. He calls her Lottie. And it's more like this sibling relationship than it is mother and son. Even though she loves her babies because he has a younger brother, Leonard. So we follow Benny through his life until he gets grown. Something happens, and then we meet this spirit that is also following along throughout the story, which I thoroughly enjoyed as somebody that is very, very, very spiritual and has always had a connection with that part of my belief, right? I dream about mine that have passed on before. I thoroughly believe that they are supporting my life. There is proof in that, alongside of all of the other things that I choose to believe in. So to read a book that is about how this spirit is guiding you through things, guiding them through things, not just Benny on his own, but the rest of his lineage, right? Benny ends up going to war in Japan, I believe. It's been so many wars. I don't know how people in South Korea. I'm sorry. I'm as much as I love historical fiction. I've only been able to retain history through reading historical fiction. When I was in school, history class felt too much like gossip to me, and I didn't want to be in all them. I didn't see the reason to be in all them people business like that. Okay, listen, they was over there fighting. That's their business. Did they sort it out? It felt too much like gossiping, and they raised me to mind my business, and I do that. But anyway, Benny ends up going to war. He ends up with PTSD on top of suffering from, the things that he saw and some really traumatic things that happened to him as a kid, right? And losing his mother. He tries to do the right thing by taking Leonard and going to where their older brother is in St. Louis, but he's dealing with PTSD. I really feel like as a community, we should all learn about PTSD for soldiers. I really feel like there should be an emphasis on this, because I don't think we realize how much it actually affects us, and what is actually happening to them. I think we need to break the military down to a simpler understanding of the simple fact that they are teaching children, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds. They are teaching children how to kill. They're turning them into killers. At the basis of it, do they get a lot of other experiences? Do they get to travel the world? Yes. Are there some good aspects to the military? I'm probably sure there are, right? Am I glad that we have a sort of military system so that we can walk this world, this country freely, and I am so thankful for all the things that they do, but we also need to put more of an emphasis to get them the help that they need when they come home. I don't think at all that they should be able to just come home and walk freely right away, because much like we have certain jobs, right? Like I used to work at the bank, right? There are certain things that I learned at the bank that are instilled in my head and will never leave me, right? From simple things to the way that I count money, to the way that I manage my money, to the way that I handle going into the bank, the things that I know I can't leave those things. The same goes for people that work for Verizon and sell cell phones, for people that work at Target, right? People that have worked in retail, or people that do hair. There are just certain things that come with your career that you are never going to forget. We need to have that same thought process to the people that are in the military and have been to war. They have seen things that gratefully we can't even imagine. We cannot even imagine the types of things that they see. And this book puts an emphasis on that, right? This book takes a young man who thinks going to the military is going to change his life for the better. It's going to give him access to money, to a career, and all of these things, right? And he goes to South Korea and he experiences all of these things, and he survives, right? Because he's guided by this spirit that is there to, try to help protect him and so on and so forth. But he comes back changed forever. And on top of that, he was raised by a lunatic. Okay? So he has all of these things in a time where, one, racism is still very prevalent, right? So although these black men were fighting in this war and they were seen as heroes, they still came back as Negroes. Even in their dress blues, even in their uniforms, even though they deserved all of this respect and all of these accolades and all of this help, they deserved so much, and they still came back and they were just plain old Negroes. You go back to the back of the bus, you enter in the back, you N-word. Keep that in your mind, okay? Remember that. Remember that when you think that PTSD is only something that just came across. No, they've been suffering from it for years. So Benny basically falls into drugs and alcohol, as most veterans do, trying to cope. He does sort of fall in love, which leads to him having his son, but then he becomes his father in some ways, right? He becomes this abusive man, which makes you want to consider how history repeats itself, right? You are your parents. Literally, you are your parents. Your being is a culmination of your mother and your father, right? But you become them too. We always say that. Like, every day I get up and more, I am looking and sounding like Gay Gillespie more and more. And it is scary, right? Because you want to be your own being, but we pick up on the things that they do and the things that they say, and sometimes you can't help it, whether it be positive or negative. I mean, you can with therapy and all of that, but he didn't have that, right? We're black men, you know, even today, it's hard to get them to go to a regular doctor, let alone a therapist that you think gonna call you crazy. So they end up having a son, BJ, right? And you see similarities in the way that Benny is trying to navigate his relationship, as well as how his wife is very similar to his mother and how she's trying to navigate the relationship, right? And decisions that were made that to outsiders just seem ridiculous, and you didn't have to do that, and you're supposed to stay and make things work, and so on and so forth, right? It's so crazy how history repeats itself if you don't do anything about it. If you don't try to change, if you don't try to acknowledge certain things, history just repeats itself. So then we meet BJ. There are some things that happen that I'm not going to tell you about. But BJ ends up having to live with his uncle Leonard, right? And his uncle he's really grateful to be away from Mississippi. He's really grateful to have the opportunity to be in St. Louis and to be changing his life in a better way than the way that he grew up. And he wants to give those opportunities to BJ. I think it brings up the conversation of getting to know the children you're taking care of, right? I think as adults, I obviously don't have kids of my own, but there are littles in my life that I absolutely love, and it's hard to not approach them from the mindset of, I want to give you the things that I didn't have, whether that be emotional support, whether that be toys, whether it be, you know, whatever. We push these needs on them, trying to heal ourselves without considering what they actually need and getting to know these children and meeting them where they are, right? So of course that causes conflict, because the adult Leonard thinks that he's doing the right thing because I'm giving you a better life than what I had, which is not wrong. But BJ was just saying, like, what about what I actually want? What about what I actually need? Which causes BJ, once he's of age, to join the military. He follows in the steps of his daddy, because history repeats itself in the same way where his father was running away. BJ was too, and this leads him to going to war in Vietnam. Again, history repeats itself if you don't heal certain things. And he gets there, and of course spirit is guiding him and protecting him. His uncle's prayers are protecting him, which I thought was it's a scene where things get a little bit tough in Vietnam, and BJ is reflecting on the fact that he left. He didn't say goodbye to his uncles because he was so angry and he wanted to make this decision. But the opposite scene is, or the same like timeline, just in two different places, is his uncles in church praying for him, right? And how that prayer is saving him. Much like his father, BJ experiences some things at war. He comes home, he has PTSD on top of some things he experiences as a kid, and this time we see how he gets a little bit better than his father did. He figured out how to cope with the things. It may not have been the best ways, but he didn't become he didn't stay the angry, brooding man that his father and his grandfather were. Which I thought was powerful, because I think there is the possibility for, well, it proves that there's a possibility for us to change, even if it's a little bit. And those small things make a world of difference. When you're talking generationally, okay? Because it gives space for those to come after you to be a little different too, to not have to be in such hostile environments and so on and so forth. So BJ, he ends up falling for someone, and they get married, and they have a baby girl who is the spirit. The spirit finally has the space to be born, right? And the last two sections of this book were so powerful to me, because especially in the Black community, right, we talk about how children have been here before. We talk about how children have old souls and all of these things, and here was a baby that was a culmination of all of these spirits, right? All of these spirits that had just been waiting for the time and the space, right? That had protected this lineage for all this time, like that had protected the men in her family for all of this time in the opposite realm, right? And now she is Earthside. But what does that come with, right? What does it mean to raise a baby that is a culmination of your ancestors? Okay, so this little girl, Lottie Rebecca, mama came out the door swinging, okay? When she was little, she was just a different type of baby. She was a different type of toddler. She was drawing things and using words that they was like, how do you know this? And she kept trying to tell the people, her mama and her daddy, I am older than you. I have been here before. I don't understand why y'all don't understand me. And putting an emphasis on the fact that it's not that the children don't know, they just don't have the language, right? And she was the reckoning. She was the force that was supposed to come and to save this family, and to get back things that they were owed, and like all of this. And it, again, the whole time I read this book, I just knew that this book was about generational trauma and taking the steps that needed to be taken to heal, so that you can get this spirit that needs to come, and you can do the things, right? No. Yes. No. It's a book about mourning your dead. The whole entire book is about mourning your dead. It's about mourning your dead. It's about knowing your family history and making space for your ancestors and the things that they fought for. You are the answer. You are the answer to other people's planned attack. You are. Your calling is so much bigger than you, but you can't hear them if you don't mourn them. You have to mourn your dead. You have to take the space and you have to mourn them. They can't rest. They can't rest. They can't help you. They can't aid in anything if you don't mourn your dead. Whole book about mourning the dead. I was like, well, I'll be damned. Oh, this book is such a spiritual journey. I think it's a spiritual journey that is personified in a way that I don't think a lot of us think about. You are the answer to somebody's planned attack. Hello. It was so good. It was just so good. It was so good. Like the things that your wants and your desires were placed on you through your ancestors from generations ago. You think the things that you feel and the things that you're going through and the paths that you're trying to pave are new. No, they was doing this before you, baby. They was doing this so far before you. And you just here to finish or to pave the way for those that are coming behind you, right? Because if things don't go as we thought and you got to tackle the PTSD and the depression and the suicidal ideations and all of those things, okay, you got to heal that. So the ones that come after you, whether you create them yourself, they're your direct children or your nieces and your nephews or whatever the case may be, they gonna have to finish it too. And is it fair to pass those things on to them? It's always these little tiny books that got so much to fucking say. It's always these little ones. I don't know what be going on in these less than 300 pages with these tiny little books. Everyone. Just intense. But it was good. I think I gave it a 4.75 on Storygraph. Follow me on Storygraph if you don't. And the only reason I gave it a 4.75 and not a complete 5-star is because towards the end, the writing got a little bit too flowery, if that makes sense. Like, I think I was so deep rooted in Lottie Rebecca's like understanding in her spiritual journey and the things that she was going through that I wanted very like matter of fact things. Like the writing here is beautiful, but it was just at a point where I was like, okay, we don't need the long sentences. I just need to know, like, take us through it, because I've sunk my feet in type thing. But other than that, I highly recommend this book. It is something that I do want to listen to again to see what I've missed. Like, there's probably so much more that I just wasn't necessarily not paying attention to, but that I didn't necessarily know to look for when I first started this. So I want to read this again, but it was phenomenal. I want to read more of her books. It definitely reminded me of Decent People in a Way by Deshaun Charles Winslow. I read this earlier this year. Me and Jess read it. We absolutely loved it. It definitely reminded me of that book. Just that one doesn't necessarily have a spiritual aspect to it the same way that this does. Let me know in the comments if this is something that you'll read. If you do want a copy of this book and you would like to support me, you can shop my Amazon storefront. If nobody has told you today, I love you. You are kind, you are smart, and you are important. If to nobody else, you are important to me. I love you. Bye, friends.